All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Professor Hill. Short video for our class, Introduction to Ethics, Philosophy 2306 here at St. Philip's College for the summer of 2025. This is week 2 in our class, and today is Tuesday, the 17th of June, 2025. And you did an assignment that was the first essays were due Sunday night. I came in yesterday, Monday, and graded them, tried to sort out a few problems we had. And but the good news is, with most of that handled, not all of it, but most of it, we're turning our attention to chapter 2 in our textbook, Doing Ethics by Lewis Vaughn, and getting ready for this next Sunday night when our second essay will be due. And so again, same kind of model. We're going to read chapter 2 in our textbook. We're going to then look at our case study, which is about John the paramedic. And then we're going to write an essay where we incorporate from the chapter a concept, a definition, some sentence that you quote, bring into your essay and apply, depending on what you think is relevant. And again, this time around, I hope it's a little clearer, because the whole chapter is talking about different types of moral theories. And I want you to make a decision about whether or not you think what John did was right or wrong. So start right up front with what I think, about John. What John did was wrong, or what John did was right. And then I want you to walk through your own thinking about that. What are your reasons? What justifies that? How did you come to that decision? And you'll see that there are different types of moral theories outlined in chapter 2. And I'm curious to see which one do you think applies to your thinking, okay? You're not supposed to apply this to John and his thinking. I want it to apply to you. And as you'll see, there's going to be something that gets developed quite quickly and easily. In the chapter, the author, Lewis Vaughn, he just says there's two big schools of thought: objectivism over here, and over here is relativism. And then he says relativism is bad and wrong. Objectivism is right. That's the one you want. And he's very clear about that. And so because he just kind of starts there, he just assumes, well, objectivism is the right one. He doesn't even talk about it. He mentions it at the beginning of the chapter. He gives a brief definition of it, that some moral rules apply to everybody, everywhere, all the time. And then he just moves over to the other side of the ledger and starts talking about subjective relativism and cultural relativism and emotivism. And he works through the whole chapter is him working through those, and he kind of defines them and then tells you what's wrong with them. So in a sense, he kind of sets up what we call a straw man, which is it's an argument where he sets up the definition to make it easy to attack, which he kind of does. He raises some good points and some good objections to relativism. But again, here now he's only talking about the negative things. He doesn't talk about any positive things. And on objectivism, he just doesn't even talk about it. He doesn't give you the pros or cons. He just says that's the right one. So you kind of got to take the whole chapter with a little grain of salt in regard to the fact that he's not just describing these ideas, he's selling one of them, objectivism. He's like, that's the right one. So keep that in mind as you read through the chapter. But you also might like his definition of objectivism. You might think, well, that sounds like me. Because what we'll see, and again, the way he's defining these for the chapter is he says objectivism there are these moral principles that apply to everybody all the time. They're objective. They fall outside of your subjective experience. It's like math and gravity. It's like 2 + 2 = 4. everywhere, all the time, for everybody. It doesn't matter whether it's 100 years ago or 50 years in the future. It doesn't matter whether it's in the United States or China or South America. It doesn't matter where you go. Everywhere, all the time, for everybody, there's going to be some moral principles that apply to everybody all the time. And that has some appeal. And as a moral theory, there's some things that kind of work. But he doesn't really even get into it. He doesn't really even talk about it. He doesn't present it. In fact, the name of the chapter only has the three he discusses, which is, subjective relativism, cultural relativism, and emotivism. But as he opens up the chapter, he lists four, not three. He just says, this one's the right one. In fact, even if you look in the little quick review box, he lists them all. But he spends the whole chapter just talking about the three he's attacking. So, I want you to think about, are these, when he gets to relativism, are these good definitions? Are these good points he's making that there are objections that he's filing against them and saying why they don't work? So what he wants for you to do is get to the end of the chapter and think, oh yeah, relativism, clearly all bad no matter what form it's in. That kind of just leaves us with objectivism, which must be the right one, which is what he wants you to, that's the one he's selling. But you might think to yourself, well, that does describe my thinking. That does sound like me. That's okay. But also think about that and really kind of look and compare objectivism on one side and cultural relativism on the other. And the reason, when you get to subjective relativism, emotivism, you're going to see that, especially the way he's defining them for this chapter, there's very few people who would self-describe as belonging to those schools of thought. That's just, I don't know anybody that does. I do know lots of people, though, that do describe themselves as saying, well, I grew up in a society, in a time and place. I've been shaped and formed by that. My language, my habits, my customs, my likes, my diet, everything about me and my thinking has been shaped by my time and place and culture. So therefore, it also makes sense that the morality that I share with the fellow members of my society, my cultural group, has shaped my thinking on these values and what I think is important and how I make ethical decisions. That's what cultural relativism is about. I think there's something to that. We're going to come back to that tomorrow when I do a little bit more about the difference between cultural relativism and objectivism, which again has some appealing parts to it, but he doesn't even do a pro and con in the chapter. We'll do that for him. Since he left that out, we'll step into it a little bit. So we'll do some of that tomorrow with the video that I've made about World War II, a little historical event we'll talk about tomorrow. But for today, read through the chapter, look at the theories, and be thinking to yourself, I need to understand these, because when I apply my thinking to the case study, when I make a decision about John, and I say, yes, I think he did the right thing, or John, dang, he made a big mistake, I think he did the wrong thing, you have to press into, well, why do I think that? What's that based upon? What's the foundation of my judgment? And I think what you're going to find is that some of you are going to say, well, he violated a rule or a principle that applies to everybody. And by violating that, that's how we know what he did was wrong. That's kind of objectivist thinking, that there's a rule or principle out there and we're supposed to learn what they are and then abide by them. Or you also might say, well, look, I think what John did was wrong, but what he did was wrong was a violation of a culturally shaped and formed value. I know he did was wrong, and I know because it violates our shared sense of what's a good thing and what's a bad thing that's arisen from our society. Now, you see, you end up on the same side of the fence. What John did was wrong, but you might have two very different explanations for how you got there, very different reasons and thinking. One that you violated some big rule that applies to everybody, and one that you violated the cultural customs and mores of our society. That's a different foundation, a different set of beliefs about, even if you end up with the same conclusion. So that's going to be the tricky part. If that sounds confusing, read the chapter. You'll understand a little bit better. Hey, I guess it's time for me to go. All right, take care. I'll talk to y'all soon. More tomorrow. Bye. Let me finish this and get this. I got a lot going on.